Great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. We've got a full agenda today, and we're going to take probably all of the time for sure. So we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to our first Clean Waters Initiative workshop of the year, Navigating Texas Water Development Board Grants and Loans for Water and Wastewater. My name is Todd Running, and I'm the Manager of Water Resources at the Houston-Galveston Area Council. Today, we are lucky to have some great guest speakers from the Texas Water Development Board, Keta Caballero and Nancy Richards. There are also several members of the East team of the Texas Water Development Board that will be available to answer any questions that come up. During the course of the meeting, please feel free to enter questions into the chat, and the speakers will have an opportunity to respond to questions at the end of their presentation. We will also have some poll questions during today's program. And we've got a couple of folks that are helping us out monitor the chat and point things out in case people can't see things when they have their presentations open. And that's Andrea Tantillo and Rachel Wyndham from HGAC. So I want to give you just a little bit of background for us through a water quality lens before we get started here. 50% of the stream miles in the HGAC service area are impaired by fecal bacteria levels that are higher than the contact recreation standard. And these bacteria can come from any number of potential sources, from wastewater treatment facilities and sanitary sewer collection systems, failing or poorly maintained on-site sewage facilities, pet waste, agriculture and ranching, feral hogs, as well as wildlife. And the Clean Water Act requires that the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to address these impaired waters through watershed-based management planning. These include both total maximum daily load plans and watershed protection plans. So how many bacteria reduction projects are there in the HGAC region? Well, currently we have 11 total maximum daily load projects and 13 watershed protection plans. And so the map that you see up here is a little bit busy, but you'll have a chance to see how those break out a little bit later in the program today. So just a little bit of an explanation. A total maximum daily load project is one of the state's planning efforts used to improve water quality. A total maximum daily load project determines the number of fecal bacteria that a water body can support while still maintaining the contact recreation standard. Any concentration of fecal coliform above the total maximum daily load that needs to be reduced. The actions and activities that are used to reduce fecal bacteria are determined by stakeholders within each watershed through development of an implementation plan. Watershed protection plans are very similar. They also are voluntary plans, but may look at multiple pollutant sources, not just a single source. In addition to watershed-based planning activities, HGAC is also the designated agency to conduct updates of the Regional Water Quality Management Plan. We conduct data collection and analysis regarding wastewater infrastructure and non-point source pollution. All of these planning efforts have substantial education, outreach, and coordination components. We not only bring educational programs to individuals and homeowners, but also try to offer the latest and best information to help our member governments and special districts. In a region that contains more than 800 domestic wastewater treatment facilities, it is important that all of these plants are running at top performance. Whether a plant needs to expand or replace aging infrastructure, the Texas Water Development Board has programs to help local entities secure the funding to do it. We wanted to bring experts from the Texas Water Development Board to you to get a rundown of the programs available to you, and also look at the process of bringing a project idea to the Texas Water Development Board all the way through getting that project funded. Before I hand the project over to Keta, we have a couple poll questions for you. So question number one, have you ever worked with the Texas Water Development Board before? Give everybody a chance to answer here. Looks like we've got everybody answered. So 66% say no and 34% yes. All right. And the our next poll question. If you've worked with the Texas Water Development Board before, when was it? This year, 1 to 2 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago? Great. So we had, oh, we're still going. So it looks like the majority of folks have it's been more than 5 years since you've worked with the Texas Water Development Board. So hopefully that's going to be some helpful information for Keda and Nancy as they get in to their presentations and can take that into account while they're talking today. So I'm going to stop sharing here and I'll let Keda.
Okay, let's see. Checking to see if I did this right. Can y'all see my screen?
Sure can.
Okay, well, let's get started here. Once again, my name is Keta Caballero. I'm a outreach specialist with the Texas Water Development Board and the Division of Water Supply and Infrastructure. Today, we'll be covering several financial assistance programs that you might find beneficial for your particular entity. We'll be reviewing the Drinking Water and Clean Water State Revolving Funds, as well as the State Water Implementation Fund for Texas and the Texas Water Development Fund, also known as a D Fund. And then we'll be going over some helpful tips for those of you that have applied previously. And for those of you that haven't accessed our funding, these are always good tips to keep in mind. And we're also going to cover our staff contacts, and that includes our regional staff as well as state program staff and staff that cover federal programs. This is kind of the first part of the presentation. And then the second part of the presentation, we'll be covering a program called the Economically Distressed Area Program. And then I'm also going to be providing some information about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is the binational infrastructure bill that was passed and signed last year, which was a couple of months ago. So that also has really good information for you guys. So I just wanted to give you just a heads up about those two different separated presentations. But before we get started, we want to give you a little bit of background information about who we are. As you can see, we were legislatively created in 1957. And so that means we've been around for approximately 65 years. We've gone through some name changes. Our mission is to lead the state's effort in ensuring a secure water future for Texas and its citizens. And so what do? So we provide water planning, data collection and dissemination, financial assistance, and technical assistance. Starting off with our state revolving funds, for those of you that this is the first time you're going to hear about this type of a program and our funding, state revolving funds are drawn down from US EPA. Those are capitalization grants that we receive on a yearly basis. Starting off with the drinking water, it was established in 1996 through Congress. They passed federal amendments to the State Drinking Water Act, and that established this program. We are authorized by state law to administer this program for Texas. The Drinking Water State Revolving Fund assists communities by providing below market rate financing, and it also provides various levels of principal forgiveness, such as disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged small rural communities, very small system, green projects, emergency preparedness, and urgent needs. We cover various phases of a project, and those includes planning, acquisition, design, and construction. And we also offer repayment terms up to 30 years. So who can apply for this program? Existing community public water systems, and those also include political subdivisions such as nonprofit water supply corporations and those entities that are privately owned, nonprofit, non-community public water systems, and state agencies. To the right-hand side, we took the opportunity to provide you examples of eligible projects. I just want to clarify that this is not an all-inclusive list. These are just some of the types of projects that we funded in the past and we're currently funding. Correct water system deficiencies, upgrade or replace water systems, consolidate systems, purchase capacity, purchase other systems, also implement green projects for those of you that are eyeing those, implement source water protection, and refinancing. Please realize that under refinancing, we do it under limited scenarios. So please contact us if you're looking to do that. Moving on to our Clean Water State Revolving Fund. In 1987, Congress passed amendments to the Clean Water Act that established the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And very similar to the Drinking Water SRF, the agency is authorized by state law to administer this program as well. It also provides low-cost financial assistance for the 4 phases of your project, which is planning, acquisition, design, and construction of wastewater, reuse, and stormwater infrastructure. It also offers 30-year payment plan and has a subsidy allotments set aside in form of partial principal loan forgiveness, and very similar to the drinking water, that includes disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged small rural communities, green projects, emergency preparedness, and urgent need. So who can access the clean water? Political subdivisions, including water supply corporations that are called or are designated management agencies, federally authorized tribal organizations, and private entities as well. Please note that on private entities, it's only for non-point source or estuary projects. On the right-hand side, we also provided examples of clean water, and again, that is not an all-inclusive list, as well as we included on the top the phases that we cover, such as wastewater treatment facilities, wastewater recycling and reuse facilities, and that includes what is called the purple pipe distribution systems, non-potable reuse, wastewater collection systems, meter replacements, stormwater control, if you have conservation easements, non-point source pollution control projects such as correction of failing septic tanks, if you have those, or on-site systems, and wetlands restorations, estuary management projects identified in either the Galveston Bay or Coastal Bend estuary management plans. So let me give you a little bit more information about our funding. So those, as you heard me mention in the past few slides, the different types of categories that we provide principal loan forgiveness for. And all these options that are within the drinking water and the clean water offer, as I mentioned, principal forgiveness. They also offer 0% interest or a combination of both, depending on your particular circumstances or your particular project. To be considered for a disadvantaged community, your community must meet the clean water or drinking water program's affordability criteria, which is based on 3 things. It's based on income, unemployment rates, and population trends. For disadvantaged communities, small and rural, to meet the small, your community must meet the 10,000 or less in population threshold. There are 3 factors to meet for the rural definition. And those, for additional information on those can be found in the 2022 intended use plan. And that intended use plan is located in our webpage. For very small systems, the population threshold is 1,000 or less and cannot exceed the 150% of the state's annual median household income. And as part of the very small systems, we have what is called the Securing Safe Water Initiative. And it's a funding that is set aside to address communities struggling with contaminants in their water supply, for example, like arsenic and lead. These entities may also receive subsidized green principal forgiveness if your project has elements that are considered green and the cost of the green portion of that project is at least 30% of the total project cost. Principal forgiveness can be up to 15% of the total eligible green component cost that is funded either through the drinking water or the clean water SRF, and the maximum is $1 million in each program. I'm sure that all of you have heard about the winter storm that we had and all the power outages. Well, the emergency preparedness category was a result of the storm. There is 75,000 grant, and that is to prepare an emergency preparedness evaluation and an audit plan. And that is a grant, that is not a loan. For those of you that have applied with us before and have a current project in the 2022 intended use plan, if you did not receive funding for the 2022 and wish to include that for your 2023 project information form, you can roll over that form to 2023. And if you didn't include it in 22, you can include it in 23. So just wanted to mention that really quickly. We also have urgent need projects, and those are projects that address and require immediate attention to protect the public health and safety. There are various situations that meet the urgent need, and those as well are listed in the intended use plan. As I mentioned, the intended use plan, that is just a plan that we have that outlines our program goals, funding allocations and requirements for each year. So I would encourage you to take some time and check those out and just review them at your convenience, so you can have an idea of what additional requirements are identified in each category that I just mentioned. In order to give you a little bit more information of the disadvantaged community, I want to kind of give you some figures here and the percentages that we use to base that on. To expand on the disadvantaged communities, a disadvantaged community is a community that meets the SRF's affordability criteria. And again, that is based on income, unemployment rates, and population trends. The entity's annual median household income of the entire portion of the service area must be less or equal to 75% of the state's AMHI as listed in the most recent American Community Survey 5-year estimate. A community's disadvantaged status may be documented. You can use either the census data or a survey. However, if you're going to be using a survey, you must submit documentation to us that proves that the census information you have is either inadequate or you have absent census data. Before you conduct that survey, you need to have our approval. Any previously completed surveys, including surveys completed for funding from other sources, those will be rejected if you do not follow our survey method that is listed in the latest version of the socioeconomic survey guideline. An approved survey may be considered valid for up to a 5-year period prior to the date that the board receives a project information form. As mentioned, for those of you that don't know what a project information form is, it is a form that's filled out and submitted telling us some basic details about what your project is and what funding phases you wish to do and how much funding you will require for the project. In addition, your community must meet what is called the household cost factor threshold. The household cost factor, what it does, it estimates a loan's impact on your residential ratepayers. It also considers your income, unemployment rates, and population trends. We also included this information in the intended use plan. The AMHI and the HHC calculated together will then give you the level of principal loan forgiveness that you are eligible for or your project qualifies for. And that is either 30%, 50%, or 70%. Those are the only level of principal loan forgiveness. We do not have any other percentages. We do not have 25%. We don't have 60%. So it's either 30, 50, or 70. To give you an idea of how much money we set aside for the principal forgiveness amounts, this is from state fiscal year 2022, and these are the allocations. There probably or may change for the 2023 cycle, and we are currently working on the 2023 draft intended use plan, so we don't have that available at this time. But in reference to the clean water, there is approximately 28.6 million. And in the drinking water, there is approximately 30 million set aside for principal forgiveness. And once again, this is just an example, and this is from the 2022 fiscal year. There were some program changes that we had for 2022, and we're likely going to have some additional changes for 2023, but I just wanted to review those from this past fiscal year. And those are that we've had new interest rate methodology. We had emergency preparedness for severe weather and a change of emergency relief in the clean water to urgent need funding. So that way it can be consistent with the drinking water. Again, these were for 2022. As mentioned in the previous slide, the 2022 funding cycle, the agency established a new interest rate methodology. The interest rate is a percentage reduction from the MMD rate that is adjusted for yield to maturity that is applicable to an entity's rating. And that is with non-rated entities using the BAA rate. And it is as follows. For the Clean Water SRF program, the equivalency projects, we saw a 40% reduction. For non-equivalency projects, we saw 35% reduction. And for the drinking water program, equivalency projects, we saw 35%. And for non-equivalency, we saw 30%. So you might be asking yourself, what in the world is equivalency and non-equivalency? Well, equivalency projects or federal requirements, that means that a portion of the clean water and drinking water funded projects have to follow federal requirements, and those are known as cross-cutters. And some examples of those are the Davis-Bacon wage, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, the National Environmental Policy Act, Environmental Review, the NEPA. These types of financial assistance or requirements are referred to broadly as equivalency. For non-equivalency projects or state requirements, non-equivalency projects, they are not subject to federal cross-cutters. However, there is an exception of the federal anti-discrimination laws known as super cross-cutters, and those must be followed. So those are the definitions of equivalency and non-equivalency. To give you an example of what interest rate reductions for a 20-year non-equivalency financing would look like, and this is an example of how cost savings or the savings that we provide to an entity that comes to us instead of going to the regular market. Here is an illustrative rate that we created, and this one is based on a BAA rating for non-rated entities. At the time that we generated this example, the market was at 2.79%, and we used a 20-year debt service term, and that was on $1 million loan project. When you compared it to the market rate of 2.79 under the Clean Water SRF non-equivalency, the 35% reduction on the interest rate, you ended up with a 1.695% net interest rate, and the cost savings was more than $1.1 million, and that was using Texas Water Development Board funds. The difference was between the principal amounts assumed that the folks will pay closing costs when going to market, and in our funds, the closing costs are rolled over in the total amounts. And you can see that the cost savings for the 30% reduction for the drinking water with the same parameters, you ended up with a net interest rate of 1.774% and a cost savings of over $900,000. Do keep in mind that this is a rate you get from a BAA rating, which is the example that we used. If your rating is higher, then the net interest rate would probably be even lower, and your cost saving for your particular project could probably be a lot higher as well. So this is a chart of the State Revolving Fund annual funding cycle. We're starting with project solicitation. Project solicitation is going on right now. Move on. Once we receive all the project information forms, we go on to the board and TCEQ scoring your projects. And then the agency publishes the draft intended use plan. Then we move on to we open for public review and comment of the intended use plan. And then we finalize and approve it. The board invites entities from the intended use plan to apply for financing. And then the agency or the board reviews the applications and makes funding commitments. And then the borrower closes on the loan. For this fiscal year, project information forms are due March 4th, and that is less than a month away. If you have a project that you're thinking about doing, want to reach out to us, I'm going to be providing some contact information so you can do that, because that is a from now to then, that's a few weeks away, and we'll be more than glad to kind of sit down with you or do a verbal or excuse me, a virtual meeting with you to discuss your project, to look at project information forms and give you a little bit more information on how to access that and how to fill those out. So please pay attention that is due, the project information forms are due March 4th. And that is for our state revolving fund programs. We are aware that with funding capacities in the SRF program this year and potentially in this coming year, it's expected that we ask that you seek out alternative financial resources to fund projects should you be considered. If your project is a recommended water management strategy project with an associated non-zero capital clause and it's in the state water plan, you may want to consider the SWIFT program. We do have a separate webinar on this program available on our website that will get you a lot more information or a lot more detail than I have time for today. I'm going to do just a quick overview or a condensed version of the SWIFT. Our other program that you may want to look into as well is the Texas Water Development Fund, or the D Fund. That can also be used as additional funding with the State Revolving Fund program if you need additional funds to complete your project. So let's begin with the State Water Implementation Fund for Texas. As you can see from this timeline, the water supply issue has been a concern throughout history. And here in Texas, our story has been shaped several times by drought, which brings me to the most recent multi-year drought, and that was from 2010 to 2014. And the SWIFT program was developed as a response to the drought to incentivize the implementation of the recommended water management strategies that were outlined in the state water plan. And for those of you that know a little bit about the state water plan, it has the 2022 was adopted by our board earlier this summer. And so if you want to take a look at that, feel free to do so. It's on our website. To illustrate just how intense and how hard the drought was from the 2010 to the 2014 timeframe, this is a map of the drought conditions from 2011, which was one of the most intense droughts for the state that was going back to 1895. So that's a pretty serious drought. To give you a little bit about background information about the SWIFT, in 2013, the 83rd Texas Legislature passed House Bill 4 and Senate Joint Resolution 1. It provided for the creation of the State Water Implementation Fund for Texas and the State Water Implementation Revenue Fund for Texas. And then House Bill 1025 authorized a $2 billion supplemental appropriation from the state's rainy day fund to the SWIFT. Proposition 6, approved by the voters on November 5th of 2013, amended the Texas Constitution, and it created a constitutionally dedicated fund. This investment and financing program, commonly referred to as a SWIFT program, is designed to support the funding of $27 billion in water supply projects, and that is based on a 50-year needs. Through fiscal year 2020, the board has committed approximately $90 billion in SWIFT funding, and that's for 54 recommended water management strategy projects and that was estimated to produce approximately 1.5 million acre feet of water supply. Program participants are estimated to have saved over 1 billion compared to the market interest rate financing. So I would definitely keep this program in mind when you consider your water supply or your conservation projects. So who can borrow? For fiscal year 2022 funding cycle, any political subdivision or nonprofit water supply corporation with a project that is included in the approved 2022 water plan for their region. So for example, municipalities, counties, river authorities, special law districts, water improvement districts, water control and improvement districts, irrigation districts, and your groundwater conservation districts. To be eligible for funding commitment, as I mentioned previously, the SWIFT projects must be a recommended water management strategy project with an associated non-zero capital costs. The project will also need to appear as a recommended strategy in the state water plan. Please note that only the project components that's specified in the plan are eligible for SWIFT financing. For example, if the project is listed in the plan as the construction of a well field, but does not list a pipeline for delivery of water, the pipeline would not be eligible for SWIFT program. Also, please recognize the benefit of conservation and the needs of rural Texas. So the legislator creating the program encourages SWIFT funding of projects for rural communities, agriculture, water conservation, and reuse projects. And we cover all project phases, again, planning, acquisition, design, and construction. And these are some of the eligible projects that we do: conservation, reuse, desalinization of groundwater and seawater, building new pipelines, well fields, purchasing water rights. And again, this is not an all-inclusive list. This is just examples of types of projects that we funded through the SWIFT. So moving on to our funding, the SWIFT offers long-term fixed rate loans, and those are below market rate. The maturity ranges from 20 to 30 years. The interest rates are based on the agency's cost of funds, which reflect the program's AAA credit rating. This interest rate is further reduced by a subsidy established by the board for each funding cycle. These are the 2021 funding cycle subsidy percentages, and these are shown only as an example. The interest rate subsidy percentages for fiscal year 2022 funding cycle, those will be determined at the time of prioritization, and we're looking at that in the spring of 2022. I will point out that in order to qualify for the rural agriculture low interest obligations, entities must do one of the following. They must propose a project that provides agriculture, water conservation, or irrigation benefits, or serve a population of 10,000 or less and fall entirely outside an urbanized area as defined by the most recent available US Census. Moving on, the other financing options, we have the deferred loan option, we have the board participation option, and the multi-year commitment option. Further details about each specific one is located in the SWIFT intended use plan, which is also available on our webpage. There are some special requirements. So updating rules. The legislature passed House Bill 1905, which amended the water code for the SWIFT. It dropped the IFR survey requirement and removed the requirements for the regional water planning groups to prioritize projects at their level. This resulted in changes to our prioritization, since we consider the regional prioritization in our scoring criteria. So these are the special requirements that applied to those for 2021 as well as for 2022. I wanted you all to have an idea of what the program requirements are. I would suggest signing up for our email communications that will keep you up to date about our program changes. And we will move, we have more webinars, excuse me, in the future, so you can keep an eye out for those. But just with information on the left-hand side with your bridge application, your eligible project must be a recommended water management strategy project with an associated non-zero capital cost in 2022 state water plan, which I mentioned. Your water use survey response for the previous 3 years must be on file for the applicant, and that's wholesalers are exempt from that. For the full application, these are some additional special requirements. You must have your private placement memo. You must execute your financing agreement. If you are an entity that is receiving more than 500,000, as indicated here, you must adopt a water conservation and contingency plan. U.S. iron and steel manufactured good requirements. You must review legislative requirements regarding your water loss threshold limits, historically underutilized business reporting, state level environmental review, master agreement for board participation funding. Reservoir funding must be segmented or phased. Permitting is required prior to a construction commitment. And that is with a full application. So I wanted to give you the timeline, the SWIFT cycle timeline. The SWIFT bridge application period began December the 16th for this funding cycle. The bridge applications were due February 1st, and that was for fiscal year 2022. This is already closed for this year, so the next funding cycle will be 2023. But I wanted to give you an idea of what we do once we receive those abridged applications. So we received the abridged applications February 1st. Board then considers and prioritizes the abridged applications, and then the board identifies the amount of funds available by category, and then it establishes the structure of financing and the subsidy terms. And finally, it invites invitations extended to submit full financial applications for those entities that were invited to apply. And that happens in the spring of 2022. Then the full applications are due from the invited entity. Board considers and approves the applications, and then the board authorizes the bond sales. And that usually happens around summer of 2022. Then we have the board bond sale, the bond closing, and then the borrower's obligation of closing, and that will happen in the fall or winter of 2022. So please note that these were for fiscal year 2022. For 2022, we are closed. We will be opening up for 2023, probably in the fall. Please, again, sign up for our email notifications, because that you will receive notifications when those project solicitation and those bridge applications are going to start to get accepted. And we do have a webpage site that you can click on for more information. I do want to mention that we also have a state program coordinator who is covers the SWIFT program. This is her contact telephone number, as well as her email address. I'll be providing that later on during the presentation. But Mrs. Zari has a wealth of information. So if you have any specific questions on the SWIFT, please feel free to reach out to her. So moving on to our last, well, not our last program, but one of our oldest programs. I want to highlight that this is also a potential for financing assistance by itself or as a supplement to SRF funding. The Texas Water Development Fund, or the DFund as we call it. It is our oldest program, as I mentioned, and it offers the flexibility of doing year-round funding or financing. The DFund has the flexibility also to fund multiple types of projects in one single commitment. For an example, if you have a city that wants to do water and sewer line projects, they can fund both of them through the DFund. Whereas if they go to the SRF, it would have to be separate between the clean water and the drinking water. It has near market rates, and it's based on our agency's cost of funds, and you can get the benefit of our AAA bond rating. We do have also special requirements. As you can see, the water supply projects must be consistent with the current state water plan. Entities receiving assistance greater than 500,000, those must also adopt the water conservation and drought contingency plan There is U.S. iron and steel manufactured goods requirements, and also review legislative requirements that require water loss thresholds limits. This is a state program, so we follow state requirements. For this program, we ask you that you call us for the availability of funds. Again, Alyssa Azari oversees this state program. She's also free to answer your questions or to discuss potential projects if you wish to access the State Water Development Fund. So this is a chart that does some comparison of our funding programs. And on the left-hand side, you will see kind of the availability or what type of activity that you can do for each particular program. We cover the SWIFT, the clean water, drinking water, and the defund. The little blue dots, if you see them highlighted under that particular program, those are the activities that are covered. For example, the very first one, water supply current needs, you can access, do that type of activity under the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and under the Texas Water Development Fund, the defund. For water supply future need, that can be done under the SWIFT and the defund. For water treatment, SWIFT, defund, and drinking water SRF. Water transmission and distribution, you can do SWIFT, drinking water, and defund. Then we look at potable reuse, which covers the 4 programs. Wastewater collection under clean water and under defund. Wastewater treatment under clean water and under defund. Non-point source pollution control under clean water, and then flood control and stormwater management under clean water SRF and drinking water SRF, and also under the defund. We also wanted to highlight some helpful tips that over the years staff have compiled and that we find that they may be helpful for either reoccurring applicants that come in or entities that come in, reapply, or submit additional project information or bridge application, as well as to those entities that have never accessed our programs before. So these are some helpful hints. The financial audits, are you up to date with them? The audits are required after financial assistance is received for the life of the project, and the cost can be captured in your project budget. The ability to take on debt. Analysis will be completed. Rates and charges, are they in place to take on debt? And will they need to be raised? And if so, have you raised them? Updated water use survey and water loss audits, water conservation and drought contingency plan. Online applications, what we call the OLA. Do you communicate? We need for you to communicate and coordinate data entry. Only one person at a time can work on a project information form. Project scope and budget. Make sure all consultants and entities, officials are clear on the project elements, the details. Do be mindful of the project schedules and budgets. With funding caps in place, do you have alternate funding in mind? Most of the financing does go through bonds or COs. We recommend that you seek out bond counsel and financial advisors early if planning to apply. And only water supply corporations and private entities receive loans. So if an entity has the ability to issue bonds, the agency buys those bonds. I just want to go back a little bit on the online loan application. For those of you that have never accessed our funding through the State Water Revolving Fund, you can access the project information form, which is that form that you submit that tells us about your project. You can submit it online, and it's called the online application. We do have a webinar that goes over the project information form process. And in that process, we also include the online loan application, how to get in there, and we show you how you register, and then how do you get into your project information form. I also want to say that we also accept Word documents of the project information form. Those need to be filled out, and you have you can choose either one. You can either go online, or you can fill out the form when we receive our form, what we basically we do is just we enter it just like you were enter it. If you would go into the online on the online loan application, we would just enter it for you. So you have the option of doing it yourself online, or you have the option of putting it on paper, sending it to us, and then we enter it. So just wanted to clarify that for those of you that have never heard of the project information form or the online loan application. Moving on with, oops, sorry, I did a double one on that. So what we're gonna do right now, I think we're gonna take a break, Todd, is that correct? So I can transfer to the new slide, to the new presentation?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, we've got some more poll questions for folks.
Okay, and just before you do that, I want to share one last thing. And I apologize, I thought I had shared this already. This is our program coordinators, and this is the regional water project development teams, which Nancy is a part of those teams. On the left-hand side, you will see our clean water SRF coordinator, our drinking water SRF coordinator, Mr. Isa McDaniel. Mr. McDaniel is currently our interim drinking water, so he covers both the state revolving funds. And then for state programs, again, I mentioned Mrs. Zari, Alyssa, and then there you have my contact name and my telephone number. Very easy to send us an email. It's the first name dot last name at twdb.texas.gov. And just, I think Nancy's going to go a little bit more specifically into her region, but I do want to say that we have 7 regional team managers, and those are 6 are geographically assigned to geographic areas, and then 1 is assigned to the whole state. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or would like to discuss your project further. Nancy, like I mentioned, is in charge of this region, and she'll go over her staff and what they do specifically. So if you want to do that survey, then I will switch on to the additional slide. Excuse me, presentation.
Great. So your first poll question is, are you interested in grants or loans for drinking water or wastewater projects? Okay, so it looks like come to the end of that one. So we had 83% folks are interested in grants or loans for drinking water or wastewater. That's great.
So for the grants and loans under the state revolving fund, like I mentioned during the presentation, we do offer loan programs with principal loan forgiveness, and there's certain eligibility or certain categories that an entity may want to see if they're eligible for those disadvantaged categories. Again, feel free to reach out to us directly, to me. I'll be glad to sit in a call or virtual meeting where we can discuss the specifics for your individual city or town or water supply corporation, and discuss the type of project that you're interested in doing. I'm sure Nancy will go a little bit further into that as well, and having the ability to sit down with the communities in her area as well. Do you want to take a quick break, or do you want me to continue with the presentation?
Yeah, I think we've got a couple other questions here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So next question, is your community interested in getting residents off OSSF's on-site sewage facilities and tied into sanitary sewer? Yes or no? Okay, so that one looks like we've got almost a 50-50 split. 48% saying yes. Next question is, when are you considering applying to the Texas Water Development Board? This funding cycle, the next year, or within 5 years? So we've got a pretty even split there. 30% this funding cycle, 35% next year, and 35% in the next 5 years. So people doing some planning here. That's great. And then I thought this is an interesting question. Do you feel your residents have a good understanding of their role in keeping their wastewater system in good working order? Okay, I think that's some of us expected to see that answer. So there's certainly more we can be doing in outreach to be talking with folks about how to keep sanitary sewer system healthy and working well, and they have a role in that. And Andrea, do we have one more, or was that the last one?
That was the last one of these. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you all for taking the poll. Okay, Keta, the floor is yours if you're ready to continue on.
Thank you. Well, this next part, I'm going to be covering two things. First one is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And then the second one is the Economically Distressed Areas Program. Probably many of you have heard of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Oops, sorry guys. There we go. It was signed into law on November 15th of 2021. It is also called the Binational Infrastructure Bill, and it includes infrastructure priorities, and those are, and I've listed them here, roads, bridges, rail, transit, ports, airports, electrical grid, the water systems, and broadband. What is important to us, or what is highlighted for us and for Texas and for our specific agency, are water systems. It has approximately 55 billion for water infrastructure for over a 5-year period. The impact of the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund base program, you're looking at 11.713 billion. For the drinking water for lead service line replacement, you're looking at 15 billion. Drinking water for emergency contaminants, the PFAS, and that is 4 billion. And for the water infrastructure improvements for the nation grants to address emergency contaminants, and that is for the systems that are communities that are considered small and disadvantaged, and that also have emergency contaminants or PFASs, and that is 5 billion. These are national totals, and that means for all state and all U.S. territories. The impact on the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, you're looking at 11.713 billion for the Clean Water Base Program of the State Revolving Fund, and the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for emergency contaminants, you're looking at 1 billion. Once again, these are national totals. Those are not state totals, and the state totals for Texas are approximately for the first year allotment over 507 billion. I do want to clarify one thing. This is a supplement SRF. This is not our yearly SRF appropriation, and this is a supplement of a 5-year period. This is the first amount, or the first year amounts for the drinking water base program. We're looking at 140 million, a little bit over that. For the lead service line replacement, we're looking at 221 million. For emergency contaminants, a little bit over 59 million. For the clean water SRF base program, 82 million. And for the emergency contaminants for the clean water, that's 4.3 million. Once again, this is the first year total allotment for Texas. Under the base program, it does require that 49% of the funds are provided as what is called additional subsidies. So very kind of runs the same way that a regular SRF runs. For the lead line replacement, it requires 49% as well of those funds be provided as additional subsidies. And both for the drinking water and the clean water emergency contaminant program, that requires 100% of the funds be provided as additional subsidies. Right now, we are still waiting for additional guidance and rules from EPA. We are having a EPA meeting tomorrow, a virtual meeting, to get additional feedback and additional guidance of how they're gonna want the states to appropriate this additional supplement SRF. Once that information comes out, we'll be glad to keep everybody informed of those changes or those rules and those regulations that they're gonna be giving to us in terms of the supplemental SRF. Moving on to our next program. This is the Economically Distressed Areas Program. Just a little bit of background of the EDA program. In 1989, the state legislature passed the Economically Distressed Areas Program. It was a program that was created to provide financing for water and wastewater projects that address specific immediate health and safety concerns. And it used to be based on the county's location to an international border or on the unemployment and income of a county. That changed in 2005, and that removed the requirements. Before the removal of those requirements, a lot of those counties were located by the international border or very close to an international border. So it used to be referred to as a border program. It wasn't particularly a border program. You had to meet one of those two, but it was highlighted as that. But it was basically for unemployed and income that was at a certain level, a certain threshold. So what is the definition of an economically distressed area program? Well, an EDA area is a water supply or sewer service that is inadequate to meet the minimal needs of your residential user. Your financial resources are inadequate to provide water supply or sewer service that will satisfy those needs. And an established residential subdivision was located on June 1st of 2005. And also, and I didn't include it on here, but there has to be at least one house in that residential subdivision established. If you can see below, I put some additional information on here, meaning that the annual median household income for the service area cannot be greater than 75% of the statewide AMHI. So we're kind of, if you look at this, looking at the threshold, or excuse me, at the AMHI, kind of following the same guidelines that the SRF has established. So who can apply for the Economically Distressed Areas Program? Well, political subdivisions such as cities, if you're a county, if you're a nonprofit water supply corporation, or if you're a water district. Please note that a city or county where the project is located must adopt and enforce what are called model subdivision rules. I'll be talking about them in a little bit. So what are the eligible activities? If these look familiar, they are part of the SRF and the SWIFT as well. We cover planning, land acquisition, design and construction. We can cover all 4 phases of the project under EDAP, or we can cover just whatever you need to be done. For example, if you already have your planning, you already done all your land acquisition and design, all you're wanting is construction, then we'll just cover you for construction. Now, if you are just in the planning stages and say, hey, right now, all I need is planning and I need assistance with planning this project, I'm not, I'm not moving forward. Besides that, we can do that as well. If you want assistance for all 4 phases and you're eligible for all 4 phases, then we cover that as well. So eligible EDAP projects, we do, as mentioned, first time water and wastewater service. We also do water supply and or treatment system improvements, wastewater collection system and or treatment works improvements as well. We've included some examples for first time water and wastewater. If you have residential connections to a new public water supply and you constructed it with financial assistance, for individual on-site or cluster treatments, such as septic tanks, yard line service connections, if you're doing indoor plumbing facilities and fixtures, if you have residential connections that are connecting to a sanitary sewer system, and that was constructed with financial assistance, and then any necessary connection or permit fees. And these are just examples. Once again, this is not an all-inclusive list. For water supply and or treatment system improvements, if you're looking at a treatment plant improvements, if you're looking at water transmission and distribution line or wells, or maybe pump stations or water system asset management planning, or if you have a regionalization project that you're looking at, those are eligible under water supply and or treatment system improvements. Wastewater collection systems or treatment works improvements. Once again, these are examples. If you're looking at doing treatment plant improvements or wastewater collection and transmission lines, if you want to do lift stations, if you need to decommission some septic tanks because you're getting folks connected to a wastewater collection system, if you want to do wastewater system asset management planning, or if you're also looking at a regionalization project, we can fund that as well. Financial assistance, are loans or grants available? Financial assistance is provided, and we do both the grant and loans. The portion that is not done by the grant, you must get an EDAP loan through us. So the maximum amount of a grant per project is 70%. If you have a grant percentage, it may not exceed the 50% unless a public health nuisance exists, and that public health nuisance needs to be determined by the Texas Department of State Health Services or by our agency. And the grants are also subject to the availability of funds. So if you look up our EDAP IUP, that will give you a little bit more information on us determining that public health nuisance finding. We offer low interest rate loans, and that is based on our agency's cost of funds. Prioritization schedule or process that will determine the funding for eligible projects, and that includes for those that address public health and safety concerns and those that are under enforcement action. And you can be under enforcement action either through TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or under the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So either one of those. How much funding is available? Well, available funding is based on legislative appropriations for debt service. The agency expects to raise about or approximately 50 million per year for each of the next 2 years as aggregate bonds, so within the next biennium. And we're estimated to do about 35 million in total grant awards. And that also would be per year for the next 2 years. Once again, that is subject to appropriation. So we're looking at 100 million for bonds, aggregate bonds, and 70 million for total grant awards. So what are some special requirements? Very similar to our other programs, this also has special requirements. You must adopt and enforce what are called the model subdivision rules. You must comply with the U.S. Iron and Steel, the state level environmental review. Once again, you've seen this before. If you have a project over 500,000, water conservation and drought contingency plan must be prepared. Your water loss threshold limits review. Your water supply projects have to be consistent with the state water plan. The certificate of convenience and necessity, for those of you that are not familiar with the CCN, those are administered through the Public Utilities Commission, previously TCEQ. So basically it's just a kind of like a permit that you have the right to provide water or to provide sewer. On-site sewer facility site maps, TCQ's on-site sewer facility authorized agent. So those are the special requirements for the EDAP program. Model subdivision rules. In order for you to access funds, if a city or county wants to access this type of funding, the project is located or must be located in that area that you're doing the project. You must adopt and enforce those rules for the regulation of subdivision in the project area. The rules are very specific, and I will share with you our link or our webpage and the link where you can go in there and you can review those specific rules. And that must be done prior, the adoption and enforcement must be done prior to you submitting an EDAP, a bridged application. So if you're going to submit a bridged application, and that's like a pre-application, if you're going to submit that and you do not have those adopted or enforced, then it's not going to be considered. I mean, you have to do that. That is one of the main requirements that you have. Also, the model subdivision rules must be consistent with the rules adopted by the agency. On the left-hand side, I just gave you, this is the form that we use, the certification of MSR adoption and enforcement that you take before your council or your commission. That's kind of basic document that you use to show to us that you have adopted and then that you are enforcing. So what are the model subdivision rules? Well, these are a set of rules and laws that you must follow in order for you to access the funds. In this webpage that I've provided, it goes over those laws, the rules, it gives you samples, it gives you form, and it also provides the training. The training takes about maybe, I would say, I don't want to estimate too long or too short. I would say a good 30 minutes because it does require some reading. Those are all on our webpage. It will cover, the platting rules of the subdivision, the development of that subdivision. For example, if you're dividing land into residential lots of 2 acres or more 5 acres or less of 2 lots or more, it, lists specific requirements in terms of providing water, providing wastewater collection or septic tank on-site, septic tanks. So it's got very specific rules and regs of what an entity or what a subdivider, a developer must comply with, and that you as a city or county, once you adopt and enforce, need to ensure that those are being followed. Those rules and regulations are being followed. So that's a link to our EDAP and our model subdivision rules. We wanted to show you the EDAP project funding, and this is just a map of the areas, the counties that have EDAP funding and counties that have approved the model subdivision rules. And that this complete information, you can access the 2021 EDAP annual report. And once again, that can be found on our webpage, and that's the link. But I just wanted to give you an idea and show you a map of what counties have adopted and what counties have funding already set in place. So the 2022 funding cycle, the draft IUP public comment period that ended January 31st of 2022. The abridged applications are going on this spring of 2022. We expect to invite those eligible entities to come in for project ranking within the available capacity by early summer of 2022 of this year, with full application invitees submitted by summer or early fall, and then funding commitments going out by the beginning of winter 2022. And this is just for the first year, remember folks, for the first funding cycle for the first year of those $50 million and the 35 million of grants. As mentioned, the draft IUP the public comment has already closed, but I wanted to leave this slide in because as I was going over what is included in the intended use plan, this kind of gave a little bit more specific information on the intended use plan because it includes the details of specific loan and grants eligibilities, available funding capacity, the prioritization criteria. The comments that were given to us will be included, and the final EDAP IUP will be presented to the board. If I'm not mistaken, and Nancy, you may want to correct me, but I want to say that those are going in April. I think that's what Alyssa told me. Those are going in April of 2022 to the board for their final approval.
Yes.
And once again, I wanted to reshare our contact list and our regional contact names and the region and the areas. On the left-hand side, you will see Alyssa's name again. She is our state programs coordinator. And then myself. We also have a general questions email. If you just have a general question, if you just want to go in there and say, hey, I'm interested in getting more information on this, or you can, email us directly. On this particular presentation, I did include our email addresses, myself, as well as Mrs. Zari that covers the EDAP, which is a state program. So feel free to reach out to her, to myself, or to Nancy's group. If you want to take a look at the comments that we received, feel free to check out our EDAP address as well. Once again, the public comment has already been completed and the IOP is getting finalized. And I think with that, I close for any questions.
I haven't really seen any questions come up in the chat. I don't know if anybody has come up with anything that they wanted asked about, but we could do that quick.
So Keta, I want to ask you a question. This is Nancy. I just wanted to ask a question. We had model subdivision rules available. Those counties that had already adopted model subdivision rules, those from previous rounds, that still holds true, right? If they've already adopted model subdivision rules, there's nothing else they need to do.
Correct. Thank you, Nancy. Yes, if you've already adopted and are enforcing those rules, then you're good to go. But if you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So what I was going to say is for this group, I know that Fort Bend County, Harris County, Liberty County, I think that's all in this group have adopted model subdivision rules.
Great. Then they're ahead, and once we open up for those project solicitation for the bridge applications, they'll be ready to go.
Excellent.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions come up in the chat. So thank you very much, Keta. It's a lot of great information. And now we can turn it over to our East team leader. I guess it's for, say, Region 4, Nancy Richards. And Nancy's going to kind of take us through the process and a lot of the details about applications and kind of going through the process from application to the funding. So Nancy.
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. My name is Nancy Richards. As Todd said, first of all, I'd like to thank Todd and the Harris-Galveston Area Council group for inviting us to speak today. This is an excellent opportunity to reach out to everybody that basically covers Region H of the Regional Water Planning Group. So that's fantastic. Thank you. And so my name is Nancy Richards. I am the team lead of the East Texas team. Sometimes you'll hear it's called Team 4, special projects team. We get a lot of crazy projects in our area. So on the line today, most of my team are here. So I'm going to introduce them and have them turn on their cameras as I introduce them. And so on the line, we have Marcus Snell, who is my senior engineer.
Hi.
Yeah. We have Lucy Luera, also an engineer. We have Matt Young. No, Matt's on. Matt, are you on?
Hello.
Hi, Matt. And then we have Scott Galloway. So I don't know if Scott made it on or not. And then we have joining us from Team 7 is Bill Blake, who used to be on my team, now the senior engineer for Team 7. So we consider him our guest senior engineer. So we got Bill as well.
Nice to meet everyone.
And so just so you guys know, Bill, Scott, Matt, Lucy, and Marcus are all located in our Houston field office. So for those of y'all there in Harris, Fort Bend counties, they're right there. Y'all are gonna have to correct me. It's like 290, between 290 and 45, kind of the northwest corridor of Houston. All right, y'all? Okay. And then here in the Austin office, we have Britt Paredes. She's our environmental reviewer.
Hello.
And then we have Annette Mass, legal. We have April Alcorn, who's one of our financial advisors. And then last but certainly not least, Susan Vela Rice. She's my admin assistant.
Hi, how are you doing?
So I just wanted to introduce everybody so y'all can have names to go, places to go with the names that folks that, you want to, if you need to call somebody, have a question about anything that Keta's going over or just a project in general, feel free to reach out to any of our team. Okay, and with that, one of the things that Todd wanted me to talk about when we started talking about this this webinar was how do ideas become projects? And it's really, y'all already have the ideas, and on the polls that I saw, it looks like a lot of you guys are planning on coming in the future. So if you got a capital improvement program or plan that you looking to get funded, those of you that are more than a year or two out, you guys are the guys that we really want to talk to, because our funding, as you could tell from Keta's slides, it's not quick. We're not quick. A lot of our programs have two-step processes that take time. So we want to talk to y'all. We want to be able to let you guys know what steps are going to be needed, and just depending on what project you have in mind, we can start recommending you for funding. So my suggestion is to call us early and talk to us about your project. Talk to us about your need, and we can start recommending programs and the types of information that you're going to need to access Water Development Board funding. And I know during Ket's presentation, a lot of the websites were given, and I kind of wanted to just kind of share this with you guys. So let me share my screen. Can y'all see the Texas Water Development Board website?
Not yet. You have to push share twice, once on the
Okay.
green bar and once on the blue bar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you see it now? Okay. So I don't know about you guys, but there's, I'm visual. I need to go through things. When I land on a web page, I don't know exactly where to go. So this is when you land on the Texas Water Development Board web page, this is it. This is what you're going to see. And to access all the programs that you've heard about today, you go to the financial assistance page there. And that has all of the programs that Keta talked about today. You can see plus some with the clean water, the drinking water, the EDA, and then we get into some of our other like FEMA and flood projects that we didn't really talk about, but the information is there if y'all want them. And all you gotta do is just click on one and it'll expand out, and all the information, a lot of the information that Keta talked about is here on that page. And like I said, I think a lot of those links were sent, but in case you're ever just wondering how to get to our website and navigate around it, that's the way to do it. And right here, again, if you're like me and you're visual, you click on the state revolving fund, or sorry, the SWIFT. It's gonna pull up a tabular form of our all of the regional water programs and teams. And one of the things that we're changing, kind of moving forward, probably in the next couple of months, is we're going to an application and closing team. So you can see those folks here. And so when apps come in, it'll be it'll go not to a specific FA. April, did I introduce you? I did, didn't I? Yes, okay. So April is one of our financial analysts right now, and she'll be working on this team to take in applications when they come in, as opposed to it just coming in the way it was. The FAs were on a specific team, but we've kind of changed that out a little bit to hopefully get applications moving a little bit quicker. So I wanted to point that out. And also, like I said, if you're visual and you want to see exactly what counties are in the region, this is it. One other change that I wanted to mention, I know there's not a lot, maybe not anybody here from Region I, but Region I and another region just north of us are actually going to Team 7. And so right now it's a statewide team, but that region, I think it's D, out of the Dallas area, will become a new regional team that Jeff Taylor will be the leader of, and that's where Bill's going to be the senior engineer of Regions D and I. So if y'all have any friends in the D&I area that y'all want to talk about funding with, recommend them to talk to the Team 7 folks. But again, this is just visual. If you want to see a map, and I know for the Harris-Galveston Area Council, there's a couple of counties that fall outside of Region H. And Region H, if y'all are not familiar with the state water plan planning groups, there's 16 regional state water planning groups, and they're broken out by letter. And H is just the Harris County, the Harris region, South Texas. They're not named by any certain, the letters don't correspond to any certain region, but, or sorry, county within a region, say it like that. I is, of course, this group up here. So if the 3 counties, I did download this too. For those of y'all that are, I think it's, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Colorado, Wharton, and Matagorda. that might be just outside of Region H. You guys fall into Region K. And so I did pull up the map here. If y'all have questions about any of our funding programs, Dane Larson is the manager of that group, and also very knowledgeable in Water Development Board programs. But if you have like a specific question or something on your project, Dane is certainly, I can answer it, Kath can answer it, any of the program coordinators can help you. But if you're looking for your specific regional contact, I just wanted to put that up there as well. Also on our website, there was a lot of mention of guidance. And so you can come down here and then talk about the financial assistance application. All of that can be accessed through the financial assistance page over here on the left-hand side. And Keta mentioned early on the interest rates. And so you can find those interest rates on our website. They are updated every Friday. So if you're ever curious as to what rates are doing, you can come in, you can look at our website, and it'll pull up a memo that looks like this. So y'all can see as of last Friday, here's what the rates look like for our programs. And this is very helpful if you're trying to talk to a council or a board, and you want to talk about funding. This is a great website to remember to come and just compare how what the rates look like versus the market rates. And so once you've decided that you want to come into the Water Development Board, what do? Like I said, you call one of us, you talk to us, you fill out any kind of like project information form or a bridged application, depending on the program that you want to come in for. And once all of that gets through our system, then you'll have what's called a pre-application meeting. And just about all of our funding programs have a pre-application meeting. And what that is just a meeting for your consultants, because we typically deal with FAs, bond councils, and engineers, plus any board members or members of your city that are going to be involved in the project. And we just talk about an application, what we need, what's going to happen during the project, during the construction, what type of environmental review are you going to need? And so all of my team typically attend that pre-application meeting, and it's your chance to ask questions of how long is this going to take, and when can I get my money, and all of those questions. Of course, they all have different answers depending on the type of project that you have. But we're all available to answer questions at that pre-application meeting. If you don't know what type of program that you want to come in for, we can do a pre-informational meeting as well, where we have that same group of folks come in and talk to your city council or your city or your board members, or just just you yourself as an individual. And if you just want to talk to me, you can call me. Like I said, we are available to answer your questions. My team or any of the other folks that Keta mentioned in the program area as well. So what types of projects can we fund, and specifically what types of projects are we funding in my region? And I'll tell you, you guys in Region H, y'all are some creative folks, and we got some interesting projects out there. We've done everything from a small $58,000 project to decommission a water well and an investor-owned utility to turn it over to a city. That was just installing water meters to allow the city to serve that little group. All the way up to $2 billion projects to expand a water treatment plant. So we've done everything in between. We can work, if y'all are working with other programs like GLO or you're working with TxDOT on a water and sewer line replacement. We work with both of those entities on projects to help fund and help time funding. So, we can help there. We work with TCEQ regularly. If you're coming into us for a water project that involves a new water well or expansion or building of a new water treatment plant, we work with TCEQ. We have to work with TCEQ, especially on the water side, because they are the regulatory agencies and they're the ones that approve the permitting and all that for new water and expansion or new construction of wastewater treatment plants. So we work regularly with TCEQ, and one of the things that I highly recommend is if you have that type of project and you want to come in to us, come in and talk to us, and we can work with TCEQ early on to figure out, can we segment the project? Is there a part of it that only needs to go to TCEQ? Does all of it need to go to TCEQ? We can kind of talk through those options with you. And so that way your project, not all of your project is being held up while being reviewed by TCEQ. There may be parts of it that can potentially get funding and move really quickly through our program. Same with the wastewater. Projects, rehab projects, water and wastewater rehab, those are typically quick and easy projects. It's working with expansions and new construction is where we're going to need some time to work through potential issues. The other, I talked about multi-funding agencies, so we can work with different governmental entities. And the other thing I want to mention that happens a lot in especially the Harris, Fort Bend area, Montgomery County. There's a lot of muds in that down there in y'all's area. And I know that there are multiple parties, like maybe one entity, one wastewater treatment plant serves 3 entities. And if the project needs to be, that wastewater treatment plant needs to be rehabbed, we can work with either one entity if they want to do funding, or we can work with all 3 entities and do funding as well. So, all 3 of you can have your own source of funding to rehab your portion of that treatment plant. And again, communication. If that's something that y'all want to do and all 3 of you want to come in, or however many participants there are, we're more than happy. It's just going to require coordination and communication. And so happy to do that kind of work. We're doing that with water treatment plant there, working with the city and 4 of the water authorities there in the Houston area. So again, happy to do that kind of financing and funding. It's just we need communication, and that's where the informational meetings come in, and the coordination with TCEQ on the programmatic requirements. Sorry, the regulatory requirements. So, a couple of things that, like I said, we'll talk about in the pre-application meeting, depending on the program that y'all come in for, is the level of environmental that's going to be required. And again, we'll talk about it based on the project that that we scored in your project information form or your abridged application. But once we get that full financial assistance application in, that's when we'll really start drilling down to the level of environmental that we'll be needing. And so you'll be working with Britt on my team to give her the information that she needs, or to coordinate with the various agencies that you need to coordinate with. And again, same with the TCEQ. We've had to coordinate with EPA on a couple of occasions just for waivers for iron and steel, or to get when you start getting into the Davis-Bacon wage rates, there may not be a rate that is required, that is available for you to use, and we can work with EPA and the Department of Labor to help get those wage determinations as well. And then of course we'll talk about financial, what's your pledge, what kind of bonds are we going to have? Are we going to have revenue bonds or certificates of obligation? So we'll be working with your financial analyst and your bond counsel as well. And one of the two things that I wanted to mention financially, I wanted to reiterate one of the things that Keta said in her presentation. If you have the ability to sell bonds, then you must issue bonds for TWBB funding. So just keep that in mind. That's why I say we know a lot of the bond councils in the area. So a lot of those folks have done work with us and we're familiar with Water Development Board requirements. And the second thing is you have to have an audit. So make sure that your financial audits are up to date. Those are two of the big things that we look for financially when you come in funding. And with that, I can take questions.
Nancy, can you do me a quick favor? And I apologize, I didn't turn my camera on at the beginning. Can you go to the main page and show them how they can connect with us?
Yes, I can do
To the
that.
very top, to the
Yes.
right-hand side, there, right here in the, see it in the top? A little further
right
up.
here. Connect with us.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's how they can connect with us. I also want to let you all know that the webinar is on our webpage and it's in the main financial assistance main page, kind of towards the middle part. There you go. A little bit further down, right there. So you can listen to the presentation as well. We have the SWIFT presentation webinar on there. We also have the project information form webinar on there. So those can be listened to at their convenience.
Yes. And the other thing, we have guidance manuals here. So if you ever have any questions, like what is iron and steel, you can come over here and type in, US iron and steel, or just iron and steel, and it'll give you, guidance and forms for American iron and steel, US iron and steel. What does that mean? How do I qualify for a waiver? Can I qualify for a waiver? So if y'all are ever bored and you need something to read, our website is full of fascinating financial information and program information to read through. So, should never ever be lack for reading material.
And one other thing, you're not limited to the number of project information forms that you can submit or a bridge applications that you can submit. I highly encourage those of you that are looking at the State Revolving Fund and through those SRF supplements to submit, if you have several projects that you've thought about and, feel that you only want to submit one, feel free to submit, several, because with that supplemental funding, it's going to kind of open up some additional money.
That was a comment that I was going to make. It looks like you're giving us about $550 billion worth of extra work this next year. 150 million.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to meeting with EPA tomorrow to see, what direction and guidance they give us about those finalized policies and regulations.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, what I echo what Keta said, and anybody that calls me, anybody that has talked to me on the phone and asked me anything about a project, I know I like to talk when I get on the phone. that's my first suggestion is if you don't know what you're looking for, just submit a project information form for the state revolving fund program and just see what sticks, see where you score. You might qualify for some free money. We call it principal forgiveness in the state revolving fund. That's just our fancy way of saying grant. But you might qualify. So just put that out there, and you can always roll it forward to the next year if for whatever reason your project cannot get funded. Roll it forward to the next intended use plan. And I'm assuming, since a lot of these are relatively new, intended use plans like the EDA, I don't know if we'll be able to roll forward. That may have those same options on some of our other funding programs as well.
But always try to encourage for folks to reach out to us with any questions, or if they want to discuss specific project. I'm available. Nancy's available.
Yep.
Our state and SRF coordinators are available.
Yep.
We like to talk to people. Call us.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm not so good at doing this type of presentation, but when I get on the phone, man, I love to talk. So you got some time to talk about projects. So it's one of my favorite parts of this job is trying to help people figure out what funding program. And I'll mention this as well. We understand that Water Development Board may not be the be all end all funding for your project, or the timing may not meet your project's needs. So we also work with other funding agencies in what's called the TWIC group. It's the Texas Water Infrastructure Coordination Council or Committee. I can never remember the second seat. But we meet quarterly with like GLO and USDA and TCEQ Small Business Assistance and a lot of the just other funding programs that are out there to say, hey, we had this project, we're not going to be able to fund it. Maybe you guys can, or I can certainly give that contact information to you, which is something that I routinely do when I talk to folks, because I know we're not the only funding agency. I like to think we're the best funding agency, but might be a little biased. But certainly we know there are other options out there, and happy to share that contact information with you as well. If there's something that and like I said, we can partner with a lot of those funding agencies as well. Are there any other questions? Marcus or team, is there anything that I did not mention that y'all would like to mention?
Sorry, I double muted myself. No, I think y'all have done an absolutely fantastic job, and I don't have anything else to add other than we're all here. If anybody has questions on funding and projects or requirements thereof.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat that have come up. As Marcus said, I will say just a lot of really great information, and thank you very much. And I've just got a few tools that I'm going to go through in a little bit, so that'll help folks fill out their application for Texas Water Development Board. So thank you, ladies. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Oops, I went too far. So there are several areas on the Texas Water Development Board project information forms, where it's going to be necessary to include information about any water quality impairments that there might be in water bodies that your project will be discharging to. And you may also have the need to have information on economically disadvantaged areas or vulnerable populations in your application. And HGAC has several tools that can help you develop your application and address those issues. The first of these tools is our Water Resources Information Map. And I'm not going to take you live. Our internet site at the office, we're working remotely. Our internet site is down this afternoon for some reason. So I've got some screenshots that I'm going to share with you. So we're not going to be going live because, well, we all know Murphy's Law, right? But the first of these tools is our Water Resources Information Map, or the RIM. And the application is straightforward and it's easy to use. You can see all of the ambient water quality monitoring sites in the region, as well as do queries that will show you which water bodies have impairments for bacteria, dissolved oxygen, PCBs and dioxin, and show you the concerns for nutrients. And by using the RIM, you can access data for each of these monitoring locations as far back as there's data for, in many cases back into the late 1990s. So you can do a lot of different queries. You can look at all of those different parameters, and then you can go in and click on each of these individual sites and get all the data that you might be looking for, including what those monitoring sites look like. So there's just a wealth of information there on the RIM. The next tool is our OSSF mapping tool, or on-site sewage facility mapping tool. Currently, there are about 111,000 permitted OSSFs in the HGAC region. We added over 4,000 new systems in 2020, and that's those red dots. And so you can see there are a lot of systems out there. There are another estimated 200,000 unpermitted OSSFs in the HGAC region, and most of those were those that were put in the ground. Those were established before permitting became necessary back in 1989. And so when you go in to the tool, the on-site sewage facility mapping tool allows you to see where permitted OSSFs are in your area. You can get a good idea where they're at, but it will also allow you to see the age of the permitted systems, as well as the concentration per square mile of the systems in your area. And you can conduct an analysis also that will let you see areas that most likely have OSSFs that were installed before OSSF permits were required. So you'll go in and do a residential analysis, and really what it's looking at is the areas of sanitary sewer systems. We know where all of those areas are. Those are mapped out. It's looking for areas where we know there are residential units, but there is no sanitary sewer service available, and we don't have any registered permit for an OSSF. So it'll help you highlight those areas and find those areas as well. This isn't so much a tool. We talked a little bit about it before. There are currently 11 total maximum daily load projects that address fecal bacteria within the HGA service area. HGAC staff, we've worked with local stakeholders to develop total maximum daily load and identify voluntary measures to reduce bacteria. We've seen some success in reducing bacteria levels throughout the voluntary actions being carried out by local governments, nonprofits, and residents, some of which include, we've conducted targeted monitoring to identify sources of bacteria, addressing sanitary sewer system overflows, applying green infrastructure practices to detention and development, improvements to county septic system maintenance, requirements for homeowners, and then repairing and replacing septic systems and providing targeted outreach and technical assistance, such as septic system homeowner education courses. There are currently 13 watershed protection plan projects that address fecal coliform within the HGA service area. And again, we've looked at similar issues within each of those and have seen really good progress. So we're really happy about both our TMDL and the watershed protection plans that are completed and ongoing. And if you haven't been part of the process, if you haven't been involved in the stakeholder meetings, I'd encourage you to get online, take a look at what we've got there. And if we've got meetings coming up, take a look at that and take a look at getting further involved with those. And then finally, I just want to talk about our regional equity tool. Really allows you to get an instant summary of race, age, education, income, poverty, and there are some more things that you can look at in there as well. This screenshot is just one of many that we displayed poverty levels in the area. So, and the tool can also do more advanced queries that we just don't have time to get into today, but I really welcome you to get on the HGAC website, get in here and look at this tool. It's really eye-opening. It's a very useful tool, and I think you'll find it useful for your work and your applications for the Texas Water Development Board. So I'm going to ask, before we wrap up for today, we've got a couple other polls or poll questions that we'd like to ask. So Andrea, if you could bring those up. So, we had kind of a high level overview of those tools. Question is, would you like more information and in-depth training on any of those tools? And we'd be glad to do that in an upcoming CWI or find some other way to bring that to you. But if you'd like to see some in-depth training on those, we'd be happy to do it. So. So I think the answers are resounding yes. You'd like to see some more training on those individual tools. So we will try to do our best to make that happen. And then I think we had one last. Which one of those tools would you really like to see some training on? Kind of give us an idea what to focus on and prioritize first. Great. Well, it looks like folks are kind of interested across the board on those. So we will do our best to bring you some in-depth training on those tools. Kind of spread that out over the next several months, maybe. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I hope each of you were able to get some useful information from today's program. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you've got any questions or need any assistance. I'll be happy to try to help you in whatever way we can. I also want to thank Keta and Nancy for their outstanding presentations and the great information today. I hope you'll take advantage of the programs and the team that they have available to make your projects move forward. We're really excited to bring this to you today and hope you're really able to take advantage of that. So with that, happy Valentine's Day. And thank you and have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd.